Okay, welcome everyone to First Thought Wrong. This is we've done quite a few of these now. This is pretty awesome. Sponsored as usual by Never Alone Recovery. I'm Johnny, and of course joined with Brian and Austin, and we got a lot to discuss today. What we're going to talk about is this painting. We since this came up, I wanted you to kind of tell the story of who painted it, why you painted it, and if that's you with sunglasses on. Is this a portrait?
Self-portrait. That painting was painted by the King Saladeen. Check him out on Instagram. He's the GOAT. Phenomenal artist, phenomenal story. I mean, talk about it, come from nothing out of nowhere and build an art empire. He has absolutely done it, from, doing deals with, like, he designed one of the Listerine bottles, major brand. He's done, deal with Micah Parsons for the Dallas Cowboys. Extremely impressive. I mean, this guy is on the map. He's got art featured at the New York Stock Exchange, which is an incredible accomplishment. I know he's actually just launching a clothing line Friday. It's pretty cool. So he's got a lot cooking. We become friends just through engaging via the art. I'm a consumer of the art. I'm not a painter as much as I'd love to be, but you see brilliance. So we commissioned him to paint the Sad Boy, our crypto project that we started off the back of the Recovery Focused AI project, which will basically be the ultimate mental health tool for anyone with a smartphone. So we just wanted him to kind of capture the Sad Boy in a beautiful essence, but also to put some of his touch on it, to give him full creative control, and I think he nailed it. He completely nailed it. I mean, so that little character that we kind of created as the meme behind the coin was actually kind of I don't know what the word motif is, but I want to say it, so I'm just going to say it, even though it's probably not the right word. But it's a motif of myself when I was in rehab. So last time I was in rehab, that's actually how I looked. My mom kicked me out. It was like a blaze of glory. She's like, "Yeah, I don't care where he goes, just get him the boop out of my house." And so she was just throwing clothes over the banister.
It's funny. She said that last week.
What?
I heard your mom say that last week. Get her the fuck out.
So basically, she was throwing all the shit off the banister. I was just kind of packing in a hurry. It was just a get him out situation. So I wasn't adequately prepared for the middle of Michigan winters, deep winters. And so I had basically one hoodie and shorts and a pair of pants, and they were all burned up from the cigarettes and whatnot from nodding out. And I was always wearing my sunglasses because I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want anyone to see me. So that was basically how I looked most days in rehab those first couple weeks. And so the image was born of that. And I came up with the initial artwork of the character, and then obviously he put his spin on it. But definitely give him a shout out. I wish he was here. He'd be on this podcast.
Shout out to the King. But this is really awesome. I mean, those who can't, read it from here, the on the left it says the truth is always subject to revision, and then it goes down to don't quit before the miracle happens, and create, motivate, inspire the next great, dream big. This is basically this podcast. Everything that we, when everybody's asking me, what's your podcast about? What's this podcast about? This is it right here. Don't quit before the miracle happens. Dream big, create, motivate, inspire. This is it, And I really, the coffee cup is probably one of my favorite parts of it.
Same with what he said, and I agree. It stands out.
And it just says faith and love on it, and it's just, he just did such a good job with this. It's so phenomenal. I'm glad that it's the backdrop for everything we talk about. So shout out to the King.
Shout out to the King.
So we've got something big to talk about. I experienced one of the worst moments of my life today. Well, it wasn't my life per se. I was sitting here and there was a knock on the door, and Brian had ordered Jimmy John's. Now, this isn't a normally this isn't a big to-do, except for the fact that Jimmy John's is less than 200 feet away from us. It is 200 feet in that direction. Let's talk about this, Brian. Why have a delivery instead of walking the 200 feet?
Because I had a work meeting that I had to attend. And so I figured...
Because time is money and money is time. I don't want to
right.
spend time schlepping. And he doesn't tip either, so...
Oh, he didn't want to. He didn't want to. He was
get outta
very
here.
upset about this. He asked me if I had change for $1. I didn't told him I
Hold
didn't
on,
have any
hold
change on me.
She had to travel 200 feet, and I tipped her $10.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's crazy. That's way too much tip.
Yeah, but she might have needed it. So
I think this was after
can
I
afford
said,
that today?
"Did you?"
Oh, you shamed him, and
did
then that
you-
was his response.
Did you order Jimmy John's?
I said, "Do you have change for a 10?" But then I just gave it all.
Oh, so you weren't able to give her the $1 you were trying to.
Right.
Yeah, and I didn't have change of $1. So
Yeah, he
there you
didn't
go.
have
that was
4
it,
quarters.
you know.
You heard that. He didn't have 4 quarters.
The most deplorable thing I've seen in all my years, delivery from 200 feet away. Deplorable, I say.
Unbelievable.
So he walked to Jimmy John's and had to
What's
show.
the definition of deplorable? Do you
He
know the
had to
definition?
Like,
show
just
me
how could you?
How could you?
Despicable.
Deplorable. Hopefully that when we do the when the podcast comes out, we can have like the definition of deplorable and then how it has Brian's picture.
It's all right.
Down with that. Let's talk about that one quote on there. I want to know what it means to both of you. The truth is always subject to revision. What does that mean to you when you see it, when you hear it?
The truth is always subject to revision.
Because that's a banger. That's one of the ones that, like, you know, those little quotes you get here and there. That one completely changed my perspective. Totally and complete. 2 quotes in particular. That one, the truth is always subject to revision. The other one, he sat me down when I was just, I don't know what was going on. It was a brand new in recovery, and like I was in the back of a car driving around, went to me, something. I'm going on and on and on about all this shit. Victim, you know, how's this happening to me? I can't believe this is unbelievable. And he just kind of just stops the car in a place you don't normally stop the car. So that kind of shook me a little bit, right? And this guy I'd kind of looked up to early in recovery, had a lot of years clean, and he basically turned around and he said, "The world is not happening to you. You are happening to it. When you start taking responsibility for yourself, your life will actually grow and change." And it was like one of those moments where you just get like bitch slapped, you know what I mean, with the truth. And that was another quote from the same guy, that the same thing. But I'm curious here what you think when you see it.
So what I think of is like how I acted in active addiction or my life in general. You know, I didn't act very appropriately, right? My behaviors were off, and I kind of adapted, you know, the way others viewed me as my core beliefs. I started to see myself as that, but it's always subject to revision. You know, if I do the work, I can change how I feel about myself. Or what you just said, you know, I played the victim real well for a long time, and I would have told you that the way I grew up or the way I was treated by my family, my parents, whatever, was why I acted the way I acted. And now being in recovery, looking back at that, like, yeah, some bad things happened to me. And, you know, I viewed my parents as the problem.
Yeah.
Now looking back at it, the revision is they weren't the problem. Yeah, things weren't perfect. I was the problem. My response to little things that happened to me, they were the problem. So having identified that as them not being at fault, my life changed. I got out of that victim mentality and my life got better because I looked at things for the truth.
Maybe you weren't the problem,
I was the problem.
but were you?
I was.
So here's what I think, is this is where it applies in this situation from my perspective, for what it's worth. You were a kid, right?
Yeah.
That tragically lost someone that
Yeah.
you needed to nurture you, right? And thus no one was there to nurture or teach you, how do I respond to hardship? Like when something terrible happens, what do I do? Like what they didn't model. Because when we're kids, we can't understand abstract thoughts. We can't get like a detailed summary or outline of like, this is what you do if this happens. You watch your parents go through it and you become them. So you were watching someone that didn't really have those skills to begin with, right? But you're such a young age and then you lose that person. I don't think there's much accountability that can be placed on you, especially in the early stages, as far as like, how could you have functioned?
But the way I see it, yes, in the beginning.
Yeah.
Initially, right?
And then it becomes something else.
But then it,
I think it's an important point because like, you got people listening here that like It's you owe yourself more forgiveness and compassion than you get. We all do. We all are the worst critic, the harshest sumbitch that ever has talked.
For
Like
sure.
if I talked to you the way I talk to me, you'd never talk to me again.
Right. But the way I see it is, yes, in the beginning, okay, things happened.
Yeah.
It was hard. I wasn't taught this, or, this was absent or not present in my life. But as I got older and learned and should have been able to know better, I didn't. And then I feel like, okay, those things were messed up that happened. But I figured throughout the years, I started to embellish and like almost act like it was worse than it really was.
We all do.
Right.
That was a real live first thought wrong, by the way. Did you say it started out with I'm the problem, but now it's like, hey, okay, in the beginning maybe I wasn't, and maybe it's like first thought wrong. I deserve to be punished. I'm terrible. I'm the worst. Truth always subject, because that's
Right.
hits that quote too. The truth is always subject to revision. Like moments ago, that was the truth to you.
Yeah.
Now maybe it's not. So it's like that flexibility. That's why I love it. I'm curious to hear what you think about it.
That's why
the truth is always subject to revision.
So math is my favorite thing in the world, because with math, it's the only
Crystal
real
math or
form
regular?
of truth. 2 + 2 always equals 4. That's just the way it is. If I have 2 of something and you have 2 of something, we combine it, we have 4 of something. That's always true. Everything else isn't necessarily truth. Like what you're saying, with this, learned behavior. Learned behavior, just because I learned that behavior, it became me for a while, doesn't mean that it's going to be me forever. That's, talking about, active addiction, I thought that my truth was that. I thought that was my life, and I thought that's what my life was going to be. And I, emulated the men in my family, and they drank, they got in fights, they did cocaine, and that's what I did too. It's apples don't fall far from the tree. So that became my truth, but it doesn't have to be the truth forever. And I really like that quote. The truth is always subject to revision. Because we can change. Everything can be changed.
You can rewrite the story at any moment.
any
Look at
time.
any one of us. Go back to like a month before we either entered that treatment center or went to that first meeting. None of us are someone you'd ever want in your home or near anyone you love.
And now all three of us own our own businesses, very successful in our lives, and people thought we wouldn't amount to anything.
And each one of us
changed.
here knows one of the other person's garage code.
Yeah.
Think about that for a second. Like that's crazy. That's
Yeah.
awesome that you can get to that point. But I think that's the good. Yeah, that's the good. I don't know. That's
Note
the
to self: change my garage code. Now that's the truth right there. So the book Sermon on the Mount by Emmett Fox. I talk about this book frequently. Emmett Fox talks about the truth a lot, and this is biblically now, because, to believe, and, like I believed I was a jerk when I was drinking and drugging, and I believed I was this when I was this and that, to have a faith, like in Christianity, where you believe what the Bible says and you become a follower of Jesus, or you believe what the Quran says and you same.
Just openness. If you're not religious, it's just an openness to possibility.
When it comes to spirituality, to have that belief, and that is my belief, that is the truth, and Emmett Fox talks about the truth a lot, and because having something bigger than myself to believe in, to love and trust, know that everything's going to be okay because of, it's a beautiful thing, but it's hard. It's hard. Believing in something like that is hard because, believing in God, I'm never going to see God. I'm never going to talk to God, but I believe. And, and I believe that that's the truth. And I believe that, and it wasn't me for a long time, growing up. I know we weren't raised religious, we talked about God here and there, but
Christmas and Easter.
yeah. you know, and not even then, you know, it was about eggs and presents,
Hell yeah.
you know, but to have this blind faith now as an adult and make a decision, yes, this is what I believe in, is and make that my truth, you know, because that's the thing, is we can decide what is the truth, you know, and making, so this statement is big, you know, it's always up for revision, and it requires open-mindedness.
Yeah.
You got to be open-mindedness. If I wasn't open-minded, I would think that the life that I led before was the only life that I could ever lead. Didn't
You'd
think that
never
there
be
would
here.
be. Yeah. That's one of the principles, you know, of the
Recovery,
program,
yeah.
of recovery: honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness, you know.
So what do you think about when you think about open? Give me one word that makes you, when you think about open-mindedness, that you think of. The first word.
Old.
I
'Cause
think teachable.
you know, as I become a little older, I tend to think that I've got the idea, and I've got this is the way, and it's stuck, you know, and it's like the older I get, the more stuck in my ways I get, and you know, it's like you become less open-minded.
To me, it's just wisdom. Like, I know that that's the only path to wisdom. If I'm not open, I won't experience. If I don't experience, I can never truly evaluate something. Because think about it. Everything in the world is speculative until I see it with my own eyes, feel it with my own hands, smell it. Like, until I live through it, it doesn't exist. It's maybe. It's speculative. Like, I could have 100 situations where, you know, I go to meet someone and they don't show up. And so then I just start assuming I'm never going to set another meeting. No one ever shows up. That's not true.
Right.
You know what I mean? But until you experience it, but that can produce wisdom to where, like, now, for example, for that exact example, I don't take nearly as many meetings as I used to. I used to think everything was worth exploring, discussing, whatever, until I realized, like, some of these things are just a waste of time for whatever reason. The person's not serious. Maybe it doesn't fit with my business, whatever. But the point is like, what I seek is that wisdom, which is like an honest application of experience with still an open mind behind it. Because, like he said, like, I'm terrified of being, like, I'm rigid as fuck. I don't show the world it all the time, but secretly in my little hideaway, I am the most psychotically rigid person in the world. It's this or it's that. True or false. Yes or no. There isn't that flexibility, and that creates, like, it's a reason why I've, you know, been able to be good at certain things, but also it comes at a cost. Like, there's times in which that's cost me my family. It's cost me moments that I would have loved with my kids, but because this thing happened 15 minutes prior that's in the no category, now I'm stuck in that, and like, oh, and then I start going the narrative. Man, I didn't teach my kids this the right way, or like I didn't, you know, stand up for myself in an argument, or, you know, I'm enabling a behavior I don't like. Like, all it just swirls into the shit talking that's misery. It's misery. So I think that that's a great question. But to me, it's wisdom. It's like, that's all I really want. Because that's when I know I'm on the right path. Like, if it's wisdom, then it's something I've lived and evaluated, and like given it the time. You can't decide in one day if someone's worth marrying. You know what I mean? You might have the feeling, but you evaluate it over time. I want the wisdom of knowing through multiple experiences that this is probably the best path, but never guaranteed, just probably.
The evidence that leans towards probably.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, you just got to continue trying stuff, because it's,
You do.
you know, and I think that's the whole thing about, you know, you got to stay young. You got to keep trying stuff.
Well, scientifically, there is a lot of proof behind that it can stimulate cell growth, but more importantly, the coding of memories. If you'll notice, as you get older, time passes faster because we've experienced, like, maybe you've talked to me so many times that your brain just kind of lumps them together as Austin conversations, right? But let's say you and I go to Cabo and we sit down on the beach and have the time of our lives. We would encode that memory because it's a new take on an old memory. You know what I'm saying? So those trying new things quite literally stimulates your brain to continue replenishing all parts of your body and encoding memories.
I'm telling you, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, had you said, "Oh, Johnny's going to be doing yoga twice a week," you know, I'd have told you you're a crazy person.
Brian's flying on private jets and going to NASA.
Yeah, he is.
Which happened.
Yeah, he is. You know, But you just got to keep trying stuff. Got to keep doing, experiencing life.
Yeah.
You know, the worst thing you could do is close your mind to stuff.
Yeah.
Once you close your mind to stuff, that's when, you know, I hate when you start talking about like music to somebody and, oh, I hate country music. Why?
Yeah.
Oh,
I was that guy for a long time.
Yeah, he
Now
was.
that's my go-to.
I hate white sauces. I hate the
Yeah.
the one
Yeah,
day
I was
something-
going to use that example. So, private jet experience this weekend. Went to a restaurant, closed-minded. I don't eat seafood at all of any kind. And I ate,
This is Nobu, by the way. This is like a premier restaurant in the entire United States. One of the nicest restaurants in the entire U.S.
and I ate 4 different kinds of fish. Fish comes out of the water. I typically don't do that, but I was open-minded enough to try it. And I was pleasantly surprised,
There you
honestly. You know, so new experiences, whether it's food, you know, different vacation spot, different place of employment, whatever.
Think
Like,
about
try
whoa,
something
what's up with
not
that
for
last
me,
one you
Yeah,
just said?
but you know what I mean.
Whoa, we got a red
should-
flag there.
Hold on.
Start
You
Brian's termination paperwork, please.
definitely seek new employment.
But no, like, so think back to the moments before you get clean, right? You're dealing with the hardship. Everyone's pissed. Like, you have burned every bridge there's to burn, including the one with yourself. And you're having that moment of, it's not going to work. It's that same philosophy, honestly. Like, the only thing that does open people up to a world of joy and experience is that the door just has to be unlocked. It doesn't even have to be open, it just has to be unlocked. And if you can do that, you can get clean, get sober, you can lose those 20 pounds, you can rekindle your marriage, you can rebuild a relationship with your kids. Anything is possible as long as you keep that door unlocked. I think that's the only thing is you just can't ever lock it and throw away the key. And like when I'm thinking back to like before I really got clean and went to treatment, blah, 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 it was always like I didn't see a world in which I wasn't getting it. Like I couldn't even visualize a moment of being the guy who doesn't get high and do this and do this and do this until I did one time. And that's all it took is the wisdom, going to treatment, right? You're clean in those moments after you stop taking the maintenance drugs. It's my belief at least. So I remember that first day of I took nothing today. It was fucking to me. It was like, what is this? I took nothing today. What do you mean? Like I was trying to find reasons to go take Tylenol, like because I was just so used to pairing however I felt with ingest, snort, shoot, smoke. There's always something coming with it that I didn't know how to like. The Cubs were winning the World Series when I was treatment. Like just wow, I've always liked the Cubs since I was a kid. I'm from Chicagoland. Just enjoying the Cubs winning the World Series for the first time, 100 years, without it being about like the beer or the smoke or the snort or the you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just you experience it once. That's all it takes. Experience it one day clean, your mind will change forever. I cannot imagine getting like I know it's always possible if I don't do the work, but I cannot fathom it. I cannot fathom sitting here looking at you two like knowing I'm going to go do it. You know, I can't.
Yeah.
I can't. Can't imagine doing it. It just feels like, God, that sounds terrible. That sounds terrible. I'd rather go run 5 miles. You know, I hate running, but like those are the options now. You know, so it's like you just got to get to the 1 minute. Get 1 minute clean, then get another, then get another.
I don't know. I think, the biggest thing now is, knowing what I know now, knowing that I need to stay open-minded is putting this into the minds and hearts of the children,
Oh, yeah.
About Henry, who's 9,
children, yeah.
Henry's who's 9. He is a close-minded kid. He likes what he likes. He doesn't like what he doesn't like. And the other day, I had a huge win. Ordered some hummus, and he did not try the hummus. He likes the pita.
Okay.
He likes the carrot, and I got him to try cucumbers. And he saw them, and he was like, "Nope, ain't doing it. Those are green. Not into it." I mean, the kid he's got a pretty weird taste. Like he'll sit and eat like a bag of celery so fast, and that was how I convinced him. I said, "You know what? That kind of tastes like celery. You should give it a go."
Yeah.
And you should have seen he picked it up and he kind of looked at it.
Yeah.
And he did one of the side bites,
Yeah.
And then and I saw his light. He went, Next thing you know, he ate all the fucking cucumber.
So that was like so funny story actually. So Henry's how old?
9.
Okay. So I was actually at a restaurant with this guy at mid 40s because this was like a year ago, in which we got hummus. And at first he was like,
Not gonna do it.
try. So to date, Brian, what was one of the best things you've ever had in your life?
Hummus. Hold on.
Delicious.
Let's go back to this weekend also. I went to one of those restaurants that we had mentioned in Miami, and they brought out 3 things of hummus. There was 2 kinds that I tried, and that was probably the best thing I ate on that trip. Again, reinforcing, try new things.
So some rando Miami hummus spot over Nobu. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Well, I mean, that was a top-notch restaurant as well. So the hummus
Sounds like you had a luxury weekend.
I did.
Yeah. And then he gets back and he has to have Jimmy John's delivered 200
He's
feet
on
away.
that life now, dude. I'm just waiting
know,
for you
the
to have a black
luxurious-
car out front to take you home.
The luxurious things in life.
They got hummus at Jimmy John's now.
Do they?
They do.
Maybe I'll walk over and get me some.
No, you won't. You'll have them.
You'll order it for delivery.
You'll have them deliver it.
Yeah.
That's funny. How many times a week do you get Jimmy John's delivered?
Not that often.
Oh, liar.
No, you don't get caught at
Once
least.
a month.
This was you got caught.
Yeah, you
It
got
was-
caught.
And the guy and whoever it was pounded on the door like they were the police.
I ordered Jimmy John's until I learned that it's like those sandwiches it's almost 2,000 calories for a fucking sandwich. That's crazy. I thought I was like eating healthy. It's not, and that's why
I don't think it's the
ordered.
sandwich. I think it's the mayonnaise. The extra mayonnaise.
I mean, that bumps it a little bit, but that still doesn't address the base of like 1,500 calories for a sub. So I don't know, but yeah, I think that's a lot to think about, and I would say to challenge anyone here in the comments, like, what did you once believe that you found out to not be true through lived experience? What was it? We'll pick one next week, I'd say.
Yeah, and what I think we should do is challenge ourselves. What's something that we can try this
Everybody
week?
tries one new thing.
Something that we can try this week that
What if it's X-rated?
well then that's a different podcast.
I think I'm a month ahead because I tried 4 different types of fish.
No, but it's
No,
from now.
this is from now on.
come on.
No, there's no. You don't get any more credit.
Yeah.
You don't get any credit from Nobu over the weekend.
My credit's good these days.
What's something that you've never done or you've said that you would never do that you can do this week?
All right.
I don't know.
I don't know.
interested.
I'm kind
gonna
of
figure it out.
stumped. I'm going
This
to
will be
figure something
interesting to
out.
see.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for listening in to this week's episode of First Thought Wrong. We Never Alone Recovery. Brian, you want to give us the spiel real quick?
Never Alone Recovery, a complimentary resource for those struggling with addiction and mental health. Give us a call. We can connect you with the necessary resources for your specific situation. 1-855-831-9996.
Okay. We'll see you next week.
Back to you in the studio, John.